My name is Philip Biliovets, and I am the IS lead and the project manager for this project. Our capping project was called Outfox, and it is the best and the only LMS that you will ever need. So if you have a passion to share knowledge with others and teach young minds or conduct cutting edge research, look no further than Outfox. Outfox is a user-driven platform similar to Wikipedia, combined with the easy and sharing and collaborative tools of social media platforms that you know today. How Outfox differs from other learning management systems such as Blackboard or Canvas is that we have added functionalities to it to be able to share resources similar to Google Drive. And by doing so, we'll have all these resources available to every single user of Outfox. So the problem with other LMS systems is that while they're great, a lot of the time students lose all their access to their accounts right after graduation. And that means all your hard work, your progress, and your growth is lost forever. However, that's not the case with Outfox. We've created Outfox to improve on the LMS systems and additionally have the ability to support classroom learning at the same time as keeping it open source, available forever, and free.
My name is Stefan. I'm a senior here at Marist College, and my primary responsibility was overseeing the application architecture with John Gustafson, and I primarily dealt with the front end. I'm also going to be handling the demo tonight, so I'm going to do my best. Bear with me. I know we don't have a lot of time, and there's a lot I want to show you, so let's get right to it. First thing, some of the technologies used for the Outfox LMS. The front end was built with React framework and Redux to handle front end state application. The back end or server was built with Express and TypeScript, and the database was built with Postgres and SQLize as an ORM. So here's a look at our landing page. So as you can see, Outfox LMS is the goal we were trying to achieve was create an open source platform where users could have lifetime access to their resources. So for example, something like maybe iLearn or Blackboard, where you only have access to your course resources or just resources in general for just the time that you're either at the school or during that semester, and after you're done you lose it. With our platform you have lifetime access. So say years down the road at work, if you need to revisit something from Pablo Rivas's data structures class or Alan's operating systems class, you do have that knowledge to go back to, and it's always good to have more knowledge to either for yourself or to pay it forward to someone else and help them learn. So just doing a quick look at our landing page before we get into the actual application. I do have some stock users set up for us just for the demo for time's sake, but I do think it's important to show what a single sign-on looks like. So this is what authenticating into the application looks like for the first time. I'm going to just sign up very fast. Let's just do this quickly. So this is what it would look like when you first hit the dashboard. Now I have a user under myself created already, so this is kind of what a full, after somebody that's used this application for a little bit, this is what it would look like. So as you can see, you have the option of creating groups of resources or attaching resources to your user. So let's kind of start with resources just attached to the user and not grouped. Here I can come down to my resources and hit create resource. So say, just for example, I had a link that is really useful, something I come back to often, and something that maybe pertains to something I'm doing at the time. Say if I was doing a lot of TypeScript and I wanted to save the TypeScript site or just the documentation, I can say sorry, I cannot spell for the life of me, documentation. I could grab this link over here, paste in that link URL, and now I have this resource attached to my user. Say if I had maybe an image, we also do files. So the file types we support currently are PowerPoint, Word docs, images, MP4s, text documents, PNGs. We have a pretty wide range that we can support. So just to show, say if I want to choose file, and I have a UI design that I really like, I could say maybe this one. I could say UI design from Dribble. And now I have this UI design in my resources that are attached to my user. So getting into the grouping of resources, I have the option of, here's some groups. I have comp.org, operating systems, ethics, some miscellaneous React resources. If I wanted to create another group, say one for this class, CMPT, I believe this is 475. Don't be mad at me, Gormley, if I'm wrong. Let's just say capping. I now have this capping group that's empty. And let's see what maybe a group that has some resources in it already. So this is like your group view. This is just one resource here. I can add resources, edit the group, change the name. I could delete the group entirely. I'll get into the share more in a second. So say this group has how interrupts work. I can just come over here. I can hit go to resource.
So now that we know,
and this is a lecture on how interrupts
work using programmed I/O.
So another resource I can have is, like again, a TypeScript refresher. We do a lot of TypeScript this year for some reason, which is a good thing. Here I have some TypeScript basics.
Two specific values.
If I want to add a resource, let's just pick any old resource. Again, I could just choose a file. Let's come out to the desktop just to show that other thing like PowerPoints work. Let's just grab this PowerPoint. Let's just say sample PowerPoint demo. Let's create that resource. And now I have the PowerPoint here. And if ever I want to download it, I just come back into this group, hit download, and now I have access to this PowerPoint. Now, taking a step back, let's come out of this group and let's go to, of course, having just access for yourself is great, but where the key and where the application or any application really shines is the peer-to-peer interaction. So if we come over to Explore, I can have now a list of all the active users currently using the system. So let's view John's page. Here is a view of what his page looks like. I can connect with him, which is adding him as a friend, to remove him as a friend. I can go in and see what his groups and what kind of resources he likes or what he's using, and see if any of them interest myself. And I can see the resources, the resources attached to his user. So maybe I want to come see what he has. He has an article on Express. Maybe I think that's interesting. So I can say add to, and something we stressed was two-way sharing. So if I am exploring other pages and there's a resource I like, I can hit add it to my resources. And now if I come back to my resource, and mind you, I forgot to mention this before, this groups is more of an expanded view of the groups current that you own, and this resource is in more of an expanded view of your resources. But back to my resources, I just added that article on Express down here from John's page. So yeah, so now if I come to my friends list, I can add other users as friends, or here I can sorry Phil, and add Connor and Jason. And now that they're friends with me, I can come back to my resources or my groups, and let's just take comp.org as an example. I can then share this group with any of the friends that I have. So let's just say I wanted to share this with John or an Alfred. I can hit share. And now this will, let's see if I remember which tab John is. This is John. Pablo, yup, this is definitely John. Let's just do a quick refresh. And I can see here is the group I just shared with John. And he can come now and view the group. And he's viewing my page back to, as you can see, back return to Stefan's page, but this is my group. But if he goes back to his dashboard and he decides, oh, maybe I like this, he can hit add to my groups. And now, coming back up here, this is now, he has a deep copy now of the group that's attached to his user now. So he, this is part of like his library, so to say. So coming back, two-way direction, yep. So actually I missed something. We had a team of Connor, JP, I know they'll get into it, and I know one other person, sorry guys, I don't remember off the top of my head. They worked on a text editor, or finding a good text editor for us to use. So this is kind of like our first implementation for Outfox for a WYSIWYG. So it's like a what you see is what you get editor. So I can come in here and say, okay, let's say text editor demo, and here is a quick sample of the text editor, and I can create this resource, and again see now that this is down here and attached to my user. So one last feature I do want to show that I almost forgot was the ability to add comments. So say if I were to navigate to John's page, I could come to one of his resources and say, you know, this is great documentation, and add this, and maybe I can go back to John, refresh his page, sorry, and now he can reply. Out. So just that kind of, you know, peer-to-peer interaction, which is, you know, important in any platform. You know, for the future, hopefully this capping project gets picked up again. I'm really excited to see what more can be done, and what this is really, I think, a project that's really onto something that, you know, could be really huge in the future. So, you know, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching this demonstration. I'm going to pass the baton off to John, who's going to talk more about the back end, and the rest of the team that's going to talk about their contributions. And it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Gustafson, and I'm a computer science major. During this project, I was in charge of the backend architecture and reviewing code related to the backend. Since we are using Express for our project, I set up the project for a model, view, controller hierarchy. This allowed us to easily determine the location of the controllers and models. In the case of our API, it does not serve views since React will be handling that on the front end. I also had middleware in its own directory so I could import and use specific methods like ensure authentication as a way to protect routes for users without a valid session, and also exclude ensure authentication on routes that don't need it, like create user, for example. After setting up the initial hierarchy, I moved on to streamlining the development process and assisting with the creation of Docker files. I began by adding nodemon, and I set it to watch for changes in the TypeScript directory. This allowed us to hit save and have it automatically lint, build, and run the project for us. I then created a utility file called copy assets, which took care of the files and directories that the TypeScript compilation would not move. For example, it was the storage files. They were all empty. The Docker files were more recent in order to streamline the deployment, but I worked with Ben and created Docker files for the front and back end. In order to enforce some sort of standard for the project, I set up the tsconfig and ESLint to help force people to conform to defining their types and prevent using types like any, null, or unknown. Also, it generally makes the code much easier to read and review.
Don't break TypeScript.
After finishing streamlining, I began to dive into problems with things like querying the database, hashing passwords, authentication, and uploading files. So I began helping look for packages that could help speed up this process. This is when we stumbled upon Sequelize ORM for communications with the database. Then I added bcrypt in order to hash the passwords before saving the information to the database. Then instead of writing my own middleware for authentication, I found a library called Passport.js. This library came with a very simple way of defining an authentication strategy. This was also around the time sessions became important. Without sessions, refreshing the page would log you out, and that wasn't okay. Last was the file upload. Using Express File Upload, we were able to save and serve files like Word documents, PDFs, and PowerPoints. After implementing the features from the libraries, I switched more to oversight on the incoming pull requests. At this point, I had to pull each new branch, review the code, and test it. This is where I had to provide feedback and explain to them where they went right or wrong. The biggest part of this oversight was working with the front-end team and returning JSON objects that were easy for them to work with. A missed opportunity for me here was writing tests using Supertest and Jest, but unfortunately I found out about them later on in the semester. Working remotely definitely came with its challenges. The biggest issue was the delayed communication since not everybody would check their messages daily. This led to a longer development time on certain tasks. Working remotely also made staying on top of classmates tough. This led to last-minute coding sprints in order to pass the demos and sleepless nights. When we didn't have sprints, I was busy looking for tasks to assign. This course for me was challenging personally. Diving headfirst into Sequelize ORM was quite the experience, but it left me with a bitter taste because the documentation doesn't say anything about using migrations until the very end of the other topics. This meant we manually made all of our models when we could have used Sequelize CLI to generate them with the associations. Sequelize documentation also placed using TypeScript under Other. This meant that TypeScript kept throwing errors because the object fields technically didn't exist since they were not defined in the class. Learning on the fly was fun but challenging. Diving headfirst into the creation of an API was daunting at first. I never had real experience with it besides a game from software development too. I had to learn how to make middleware along with proper callback functions. After that, I had to learn how to save to the server and how I would link it to the database table. It was a nightmare, but I got through it. The toughest part was reviewing others' code. Now, I do not mean this in a derogatory way. It's just a matter of everyone operates on a different brainwave, so I really had to try and tap into their thought process while reading some of the code before providing feedback. Overall, though, I had a great experience. Now I'm going to pass it off to Derek, so thank you for your time.
Hello everyone, my name is Derek Reed and I'm going to be discussing the creation of the database for Outfox. The process of creating a database requires many tries to get the right tables and associations, as well as coordination with the backend and frontend teams for additions to existing entities that they may need. The initial concept we came up with tried to cover all bases and minimize redundant data in our database, but we came to find out that it needed a major overhaul in order to be actually implemented. Many of the tables had confusing and complicated dependencies that gave the backend team a lot of trouble in implementation. After working with the backend team more to determine what changes we needed to make, we decided to make a more pared down, easy to understand ERD that doesn't try to include everything from the start, but instead allows room to grow as development goes on. From this point, we were able to easily add new relationships and redefine existing ones. This process taught me that it's better to keep things simple, because starting complicated will lead to a more complicated development process.
How's it going? My name is Jason Wilson, and I'm going to be talking to you about the Sequelize database integration. So, once the database was finally ready, I began focusing on implementing the ORM as a middleware between the database and backend code. An ORM, or Object Relational Mapping, is the process of mapping between objects and relational database systems. It achieves this by representing the tables as objects in JavaScript. This was beneficial for a few reasons. Our ORM wrote correct and optimized SQL queries that saved a lot of time and prevented easy mistakes, as well as provided the concept of database abstraction. Additionally, the implementation of the ORM made the code a lot easier to update. Setting up the database is as easy as starting the server. And when I say this, I mean it's literally You start the server, and the database will be built on any platform that it supports, that SQLi supports. Over here on the picture to the left or right, you can see that this is our resource model. And this is essentially a table modeled in SQLize. It will scan this, look in your database, and if this table or any of the others aren't seen, it will create and basically link it to that object and get it ready to be used. So my growth during the project was quite substantial, I'd say. It was very interesting experience, especially working with a large group of people during COVID. However, despite all the challenges, I was able to complete all my tasks and even learn a few things, like split up work while working on several different teams, what an ORM is, how to use PostgreSQL, coding in TypeScript and Node.js, the sheer power that React brings front-end developers, and the amount of revisions that a project needs before it's released.
My 1-minute presentation. I'm Jake Tantorsky, and I will be talking about the SQLize ORM controllers and the sharing ability controller that we implemented. So, starting off with the SQLize ORM controllers, this is using the file usercontroller.ts. On the left side, you can see that the routes for the APIs are being initialized. Each path for every type of HTTP method that uses RESTful services can be seen. In addition, the route for the relationship between users and groups can be seen underneath, as well as the user-to-friend relationship that is created between two users. On the right side, it displays the code for getting every user in the users table. This can also be used in the same way to get users by specific IDs. Each HTTP method uses a try-catch to see if there's a response from the API call. Below that is a create method that allows the ORM to add new users to the table. Each HTTP method looks similar in structure and can be used for all types of methods as long as the conditions are changed to the correct method. Here at the sharing ability, you can see that we use the sharecontroller.ts file. On the left side, it shows the code for creating a group shared among the users in the share controller file. It has the same concept as the previous controller, but this one allows there to be a connection between the two tables and are able to share resources between them. It includes associations and attributes that it needs when dealing with the created share group method call. On the right side, it shows a similar structure to the share group, but this time it's a shared resource between the users instead of being a part of the same group. We wanted the users to have the ability to do both due to the fact that some users might want to send a certain individual a resource, whereas others might want to share that resource to the group. Overall, this was a nice challenge and I enjoyed using an ORM.
My name is Mike Pepson, and I'm here to discuss the most exciting part of our project, the documentation of our Outfox APIs. Documentation is absolutely necessary because it makes our work transferable to future development teams so that they know what to expect without having to decipher our code. And we've all used a tool or language that had horrendous documentation, and it's the most frustrating thing in the world to try and figure out, which is why every endpoint is accompanied by an example like this one. The documentation also serves as a maintenance tool because it is a record of successful implementation and what that looks like. In terms of growth during the project, I had no confidence in the beginning because I had no prior experience with full-stack development, so carving out work for myself in such a large, otherwise capable group was daunting. But through my work, I gained useful experience with Postman, the tool I used for both testing and documentation. I got a taste of real-world development procedures, and I came away from the project with a better understanding of full-stack development and the tools available, notably Express and React.
Hello, everyone. This is Connor Fitzpatrick. One of the things that I got the chance to work on for the project was incorporating a WYSIWYG into the system. The WYSIWYG that we went with is Quill.js. It's a tremendously popular and open source rich text editor that was perfect for a project since it could easily be incorporated into a React component. As you can see by these images, essentially what's happening is the user's input gets converted into a string of HTML once the post button in the top right corner of the editor is clicked. All the styling for that input text is also stored in the strings HTML too. This is perfect for allowing users to make extremely customizable comments. Another great thing about Quill is that it's also very easy for the user to interact with it. They can seamlessly drop images or video links into the editor. For me, the most difficult part of this task was implementing the customized post button and getting it to save the data that was in the editor upon being clicked. Overall, working on the WYSIWYG was probably still a highlight of my time working on this project, since it serves as a really important part of the user's interaction with the site.
Hi everybody, I'm Ben Losi.
Thank you, Kaz.
I'm an IT major. I'm going to be giving you a rundown of some of the things I did for this project. One of my main contributions was figuring out different server configurations that we could use and which ones of them would work best for our purposes. To do this, I had to become familiar with the VMware vSphere software. This software was used to manage and create different virtual machines that I used throughout the project. One type of server that I explored was a CentOS server. CentOS is very similar to Red Hat and is primarily aimed at enterprise customers. I also explored using Windows Server 2016 for this project. This provided an interesting alternative to a traditional Linux server. I also explored the possibility of using Windows Server as a reverse proxy. Throughout this project, I also learned about the challenges that developers and IT professionals face as they transition their projects from a development environment to a production one. These issues have an even bigger impact in the current pandemic situation, where it may be hard or even impossible to meet with your team members in person. I appreciate all of their hard work, and I appreciate anyone who has checked out our project. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Alfred Ortiz, and my major is computer science. My responsibilities were helping John whenever I can, but mainly social media. I created the banner, edited this video, and created the Facebook page. Some of our early concepts had bright colors, and we had an idea to make summer because of a fox, but it just didn't seem to work out very well. But even though it didn't, I think it springed forward this final concept, which I think works out really well for what we have. As you can see, I have multiple tools here that I use to create this image. I have the banner, the icon, merge banner 2. I really went to town and put a lot of effort into making this banner. And after creating this banner, I needed to make sure that it met all types of criteria, talking about Twitch banner, YouTube banner, Facebook icon. I needed to do everything and make sure it all fit. And I even implemented TV sizes. I also made sure that they were transparent, and I kept the original file for each size in case anybody needed to edit in the future. And here's the Facebook page that I created. And as you can see, the banner looks great. With the drop shadow, it really gives off that final touch that it needed. In conclusion, all teams really worked hard to finalize this presentation. We worked with what we had, and we were able to come up with a good product. We hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for joining.